Ladies and gentlemen, we open up the phone lines. We say it every week. You never know who's going to show up on the Nick Club Wrestling Happy Hour. Ladies and gentlemen, veteran of WWE, ECW. He has trained some of the greats. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the show, Mr. Al Snow.
Hi there. How are you?
Welcome in, Al.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
Happy Friday. Happy Friday, man.
Yeah, it's exciting.
Everyone loves the weekend. So Al, take us through. Obviously, you've been doing a lot since, obviously WWE days with OVW. What have you been up to, lately, and obviously, what are your focuses, now with your career and obviously moving up?
Well, I'm as far as wrestling is concerned, I'm still doing an occasional appearance here and there where I can, as far as scheduling, because of so many responsibilities with OVW. But I do get out and I get to go to Comic Cons and conventions and occasional wrestling shows to meet up with people and get to see the fans and talk to them and interact with them. I have still involved with Collar and Elbow, the wrestling clothing line that myself and my partner Rod Hicks started, and still going along with that. Have comic books that are coming out with Broken Icon Comics, and that where we team up with Chavo Guerrero and Scotty 2 Hotty and Tommy Dreamer, and they're the wrestling characters, but they have nothing to do with wrestling. Scotty 2 Hotty is an assassin story, and Tommy Dreamer is a set during the Prohibition days story and a gangster story. And Chavo's was a Western with his horse Pepe. So
interesting take on.
Yeah. So and then I've been doing stand-up comedy for a while now, and that's been going great. And have a movie out on Amazon and Apple Plus and Vudu right now called Unnatural. It's a supernatural Western that I star in. And then I've got another one coming out November 19th called Homeless for the Holidays, which is a Christmas comedy movie. And so, yeah. And then OVW, of course, really eats up a lot of my days and a lot of my time, all the responsibilities. And we do live television. We're outside of WWE and AEW. I think we're the only other company that does live weekly television. We do a 2-hour show every Thursday night from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. And we're live on Triller and YouTube and Facebook, and also our local broadcast channel, WBNA, if you live in the Louisville area. And then we go out nationally on multiple cable and broadcast and streaming networks that take us to about 100 million homes across the country, between Canada and all the way down to Puerto Rico, the Virgin Islands, Bahamas, and Guam. So,
wow, yeah, a lot of coverage there. So you kind of touched on it. Obviously doing the comedy. Do you feel like the transition, being in front of the audience for so many years, was, I remember like Nick Nemeth does a lot of the comedic side of things as well. Like, do you find that transition was a lot easier for you, just having been in front of the camera for so many years?
The acting is definitely it's a whole different skill that you have to really learn and adapt to, and it has its own etiquette and expectations and things within the world of acting. So you've got to basically, every one of these new ventures, you got to kind of pay your dues. But I certainly was a lot more comfortable than I would imagine somebody that's never been in front of an audience before would be. But comedy and stand-up comedy and wrestling are very, very similar, and definitely in the respect that you have to be 100% honest with who you are and who you're presenting on stage, and so that the audience is able to believe in you, because in both wrestling and stand-up comedy, that's ultimately the most important thing, is that an audience is able to believe in who you are and what you're presenting. So it's been fun. It's been a lot of different challenges, and I've just got done working. Haven't finished it up, but we're doing a wrestling movie, but it's a musical. And yeah, I actually sing in this musical with my wonderful voice, and they don't call me the Velvet Fog for nothing. So, but it's loosely based like a live action Muppet movie. So.
Oh, that's awesome. You don't see, again, there's like, we talk about like unique takes on the industry and things like that. Like that's something you don't see, coming out. And you talk about, like, you kind of touched on it, like in terms of, I guess kind of like getting over and things like that. Being in the industry, how have you felt like things have changed in your experience right now? You're going to the point, you're obviously mentored a lot of talent. Like, what do you feel like it takes now to get over versus, in the past, or how have things changed?
Same things. The most, like I've said, the most important thing that a wrestler can do, and have to learn, is who they are, so they can present that to the audience and turn the volume up really, really loud on that aspect of their personality. Nothing else works. Playing a character doesn't work because wrestlers aren't actors. They're more reactors. If they're actors, they're closer to being method actors than anything else, where they actually adopt the role. And it's necessary because, unlike in TV or movies, you have a direct relationship with the audience, and they can sense when you're not being real. And the two most important things are, one, for them to be able to believe in you, who you are, and two, to be able to describe you to their friends and family in a sentence or less. Those two qualities need to be cultivated as a performer in anything, because that is what makes you a star. Anybody can be famous. It literally takes no talent to be famous. And, fame is very, very, very fleeting. It doesn't last. But once you're a star, you're always a star.
Well put, Nikki.
I think Shawn Michaels has said that with his NXT kids, he'd rather have someone with like, I can teach you how to wrestle. I want someone with charisma. Do you kind of agree with that philosophy of training people, or what's your own, and how do you feel about that?
Yeah, absolutely, yes. But I think personally, more important than charisma, more important than size, muscularity. I've seen tons and tons of talented people that had all the physical capabilities, all the athleticism, all of the, the looks, the charisma, the etc. You can go down the list. They didn't have passion, and without that, it's they can have all that potential and it'll all go to waste. They'll never truly be successful because they're not passionate enough to take the steps to put the work in to take them to that place.
We had a couple months back, we had Crowbar on the show, and we were talking about wrestling in terms of training and moves, and with his move, which is similar, I guess I'm going to call it, he's going to hate on me, but jaded, like the functionality of the move being safe, and I guess, what do you feel like do you feel there's a big flaw, or what's the common flaw that you see, whether it's an indie wrestler or like with young wrestlers that they make at a young age in terms of being safe or just coming up through the ranks?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I apologize. Somebody called while I'm doing this on the phone. So inevitably, it always happens. The biggest flaw is that moves don't matter. They're completely inconsequential. I can prove it easily, and I can explain. Uh, the problem with the young performers is that they don't know the art of selling. Now, what do I mean? Well, they think, and so do you, that selling is acting like you're hurt. And that's not selling. You're not selling the pain of what's been done. What you're because an audience will never buy it. Hence the term sell, to buy, convince an audience of your pain or injury. They're never going to buy that because they can't physically relate to what's been done to you. They've never experienced it. That's why I always try to use this analogy to make you understand. That's why baseball, football, and basketball have such enormous audiences in the United States. Everybody in the United States at one time or another has played baseball, even if it's just in the backyard, picked up a basketball and dribbled it down the driveway, if nothing else, and have always, and they've played football, with the, if not with just the family reunion or whatever. We've all done it. So we have a physical relationship. That's why, there's a bigger audience for hockey in Canada than there is in the United States where people played hockey. That's why there's now professional soccer teams developing in the United States because more generations of children have been playing soccer over the last 20 or 30 years. Prior to that, you know, it wasn't as much of an audience for soccer here in the United States, but the three most watched televised sporting events in the world, the top three, at number one is the World Cup of Soccer. At number two is the World Cup of Cricket. Don't ask me why, other than the fact more people play cricket around the world than anything else. And I don't understand that game. I've watched it 1,000 times, and I'm like, I don't get a clue what is happening. And the third is the World Cup of Rugby, because more people around the world play those three sports than anything else. So it's a matter of relatability. And so with professional wrestling, if you've never taken a bump, you've never been clotheslined, which unless you live in a trailer park and you get into a fight at the laundromat there, you're probably not going to experience these things. But to sell is to sell who you are, convince them of who you are, because again, that's the number one important thing they want to believe. Because if they believe in who you are, they'll believe in anything you say or do, period. That goes in life, not just in wrestling. And then with the moves, the objective is to sell your intent that you're not just doing the move, you're doing it to try to win. You're trying to convince the audience you're trying to utilize this to win. And then if it's done to you, it's not the pain that you're trying to express. You're trying to express the consequence of that move. That if you get hit again or you get slammed again, or if you don't get out of this hold, you might lose that match. Because that really the overall thing that in wrestling, because there's only one thing that's fake, is that we know we're not winning or we know we are. And we now need to convince you of our intent that we're out there solely to win and not lose because we're prize fighters. And just like a boxer or an MMA fighter, if we don't win, we don't get paid or we don't get paid as much. Hence why we want a title, not just to show that we're the best, but a title means that I'm now going to be assured that I'm going to make more money. And that's why it's important.
No, well put. Nikki?
Going off of that, is there moves that you wish like people kind of retired and didn't use anymore, or like moves people don't really use anymore that you'd love to see kind of be back in people's repertoires?
The first, let me go with the moves that I think they shouldn't do. There's really only two, and in OVW, these are the only two that I will put my foot down and will not be happy if I see you do. And because they're not done for any other reason than they're being done for the audience in the locker room. And you never do anything for an audience in the locker room. You do it for the audience that's paid money to see you. So, and I'm very reasonable. If a talent comes to me and can explain to me how someone in the building can physically relate to the increased risk of injury that you're now taking by doing these two things, I'll be like, okay, go do it. But if you can't, then no, you're not. Because the truth of the matter is, every time a young man or a young woman go to the ring, there is a percentage of a chance that they could suffer a life-altering or life-ending injury. And I've seen it happen numerous times. Uh, and, you know, the two moves are, number one is a buckle bomb. It's where you basically pick them up in a power bomb position and literally launch the person backwards, where they're not in control. They can't see. They can't protect themselves, and you launch them into the corner where actually either very taut real rope or taut steel cable is intersecting, and it's held there by an actual metal turnbuckle. That's why it's called a turnbuckle, because it's a turnbuckle. That bit of padding that's on there provides very little protection. And even if you're running, if you notice sometimes guys will take a corner, they'll run into the corner where they're whipped into it. If they hit that even a little bit off, they catch that rope or whatever, it hurts. So now you're relying on somebody who's now throwing you. And to that point, there were tons of dream matches, money matches when Sting came to WWE that could have been held and they could have drawn a lot of money. All of it went out the window because he took a buckle bomb and was injured and then therefore couldn't work and thought his career was over. So that's a big no for me. The second one is anytime you bump your opponent on the ring apron. That's just stupid. That ring apron is the most dangerous. It's not the hard. It is the hardest place in the ring, but it is the most dangerous place in the ring because you have a 90-degree angle of steel that's right there, along with the edge, the lip of a 2x12, usually, that's sitting there. And the padding does very little to protect against that. And I've seen a lot of people over my 42 years in the business get severely injured on those ring aprons. And, if you can explain to me how an audience member knows that right there is the hardest place on the ring and it will do more physical damage than bumping somebody in the center, then I'm all for it. But they don't because they've never been in the ring. They don't know what it feels like. So now you're not doing it again for the audience. You're doing it for the boys backstage. And unfortunately, that's what I'm seeing predominantly now everywhere you go is that the majority of the performers, because there are no real workers anymore, the majority of the performers that are in the wrestling business nowadays try to perform for each other. They try to impress each other with what they're doing. That's why they're always so uptight and nervous and have to memorize everything they're going to do. When before they go out there, they're scared that they'll make a mistake. And quite honestly, the God's honest truth is that the only people that will realize you made a mistake are just simply the people in the backstage area that would be able to know and watch for it. No one in the audience is going to, because they're not there to identify a mistake in your performance. They're there to want to believe and to forget about their troubles, about the fact that they owe a hospital bill, that, they're behind on, a car payment. They want to come and just forget, and they want to have fun, and they want to believe in you, and they want to believe in why you're doing it. And that's it.
No, well put. So with obviously we touched on with OVW, Nikki and I we watched the Netflix documentary. We loved it.
Thank you.
I guess a lot of people talk about documentaries and posts, the post production and the way things are edited. How do you feel? Do you feel like you like the way you're portrayed, or was there things that you liked about it? What didn't you like about the documentary, or was there things you wish were in it that weren't, that didn't make it?
Oh, there's lots of stuff. I mean, they were there. You had Greg Whiteley, who was just an incredibly wonderful, talented human being, and his crew. They were there from the end of the last week of May till all the way through the end of August. And they were filming anywhere from 12 to 16 hours a day, quite honestly, 7 days a week. So there's lots of stuff that they got footage of that they didn't, include, on on the actual finished show, because there's just no way they could. They organized it in a way to tell a story, a beginning, a middle, and an end. And and I think they did a wonderful job. I don't care how I was, portrayed, because I told them the same. I'll tell anybody else if when they came in, I said, I don't know what, they kind of at first were trying to, hey, can you do this? Can you? No. I said, I'm sorry, I can't. I said, because whatever I say and whatever I do is going to be exactly the same whether you're here or not. I said, because when you leave, I said, I'm still going to be here and I'm still going to be responsible for all of this talent, all of the staff. And I meant what I said, and my reputation and my name are still going to be at stake on OVW. And I said, you leave, I've got to now go out in the wrestling world. And if anybody doesn't like how, what I say or act, I have to own it and I have to be responsible for it. I said, so if I'm going to be held, I'm going to have my feet held to the flame for something I said or do, then it's going to be something I would say or do no matter what, whether you're here or not. So I said, you can turn the cameras on. I'm not going to do anything or say anything or act any different than what I would if you weren't here. So, and that's exactly what I did. So, it was funny because you turn the camera on with the wrestlers, man, they amp it up, and, and a couple of the owners were, they were a little, hollow or whatever, but, it was funny because there toward the end, at first I was confused because Greg Whiteley, the director, just turned to me one day and he goes, you are exactly the same person whether the camera's on or off. And I go, yeah, I told you that when you got here. And I was like taken back by it because I was like, is that a compliment or are you upset about that? I don't know what to tell you at this point because I'm not going to change. So.
Yeah, I guess what is your expectations? And I apologize if I have the timeline wrong. I think post the Netflix where you became co-owner is that correct?
Oh, I've been a co-owner since 2018.
Oh, apologies. Yes, I must have that.
Yeah. No, I ribbed myself in 2018. They were like, buy a wrestling company. It'll be fun, they said. It ain't.
Well, actually, and it kind of like talking about the ownership side of things, like recently, what was it, 2 weeks ago, right before we left, the WWE ID, now they're purchasing, schools. What is your feeling
They're
of
not purchasing?
Oh, I'm not purchasing. Sorry, I apologize.
They're creating a kind of a looser but kind of developmental type system, which I think is great, and really I hope that it can grow and develop because years ago when we were starting to get multiple developmental systems. We had OVW is one. They had there for a period of time the one in Atlanta with Jody Hamilton, and then they were going to do the one in Florida with Steve Kern. And I know that Booker T at the time was attempting to get one, get his in Texas. And I thought that was fantastic because it's an awesome way to, and I tried to do the same thing on my own with the Al Snow Wrestling Academy to try to create a system where you can have a talent say comes to OVW and because every talent, no matter what, are going to have what we call is business of run because wrestlers are no ifs, ands, or buts. They're a product. So every product has a shelf life. So, much like back in the day, you could have a guy, let's say, because Cody started with me here in OVW. Cody comes in, he's a babyface, does great, have a run with him. You know what? Let's send him, hey, Booker, I got Cody up here. Would you like to take a look at him? Booker goes, yeah, and he goes, I can't use him as a babyface because I could probably use him as a heel down here. I go, hey, take him. Now Cody goes down to Texas. What's the upside to that? Well, the audience in Texas, contrary to popular belief, because it's still in the same country, but quite honestly, is a different audience. They have a slightly different culture in Texas. So what worked in Louisville, Kentucky may not work in Texas. So now he's going to get experience and learn to adapt, and he's going to figure out a way to, get his heat there. Well, now he goes out to California, and of course the culture out there and the audience is slightly different, and he's going to have to adapt and, figure out what works for him, why it works for him, and then maybe he comes back to Louisville, and then finally goes up and on the national level. Well, now you've got a performer who, has a very unique approach that's all his own, because a lot of times when you put them in these closed systems, it becomes very incestuous, and you get a lot of copying, and therefore they subconsciously develop along the same lines to where they all kind of look alike and they all kind of perform the same, have the same vibe. Now you got a guy who's got his own unique vibe that he's created from being in multiple places, and he knows what works for him and why it works for him, and now knows how to appeal to as broad an audience as possible. So he's ready to be an attraction on the national stage, and that was what was the upside to having the territories, was the ability to go from territory to territory, because ultimately there's only one lie in wrestling, and that is that the finish. That's the only thing that's fake. And whether you went to Oregon or you went to New York or you went to Memphis or you went to Indiana or you went to, Michigan, every promoter had their own way and their own approach and their own style that worked for them in that area, but they all sold the same thing, which was just who the wrestler was and the finish. And you learned and developed on how to do that. And that's why, the 80s were so strong as far as popularity of wrestling on a national level, because Vince had went around and brought in all of those workers at that time that had all that experience from going from territory to territory.
I think that what you were trying to get to, Nick, is like, again, like this ID program is supposed to be like a feeder system, like a pipeline. And I think that what people are nervous about, kind of what you just kind of said with the territory, that what happened in the UK, where when they did NXT UK, they kind of ate up that kind of indie scene and like hired all the good people that was kind of in that crowd. And I think people are kind of worried that, that in the US that could happen, that all of a sudden that might take all the good people.
Like a monopoly of sorts.
Yeah. I think that's what you're
well, the wrestling scene or independent wrestling scene is a little bit more prolific in the United States than it is in the UK. And yeah, that's going to happen, but that also means that for all of the ones that are at this level now, okay, once they go up to WWE, that gives room for all the other independent talent that were being overlooked to rise to that level, to now be seen and potentially go up and just keep doing that.
Ooh.
And I think they've refined their approach a little bit more from what they had done in the UK to what they're now doing with this ID program, that will allow them to be able to better groom talent, because ultimately the developmental part of a program is not to teach wrestlers to wrestle. It is to teach them how to be an attraction and how to be a star. And that's what it's for.
Well put. I guess, I'll try and wrap this up, trying to be cognizant of everyone's time here. But I guess, what's your expectation with OVW, moving forward? You have some stars that you're building up there. Obviously getting a lot of recognition over the last couple of years, and obviously prior to that, where do you expect to go in the future, in the next couple of years?
Just to keep growing, and the goal ultimately for us is to have a network partnership of some sort with some television network that we can, because that's one of the main monetizations that you can do, is to monetize your television show through both ad revenue and sponsorships, and primarily, a network paying you for producing the show for the content. That's the ideal world. That's the dream. So, we're trying, working towards that. We've upgraded production on numerous levels, and we're the only, and as far as educationally, we're, the academy's going great. We're the only wrestling training school that is actually certified by the State Office of Proprietary Education as a trade school for professional wrestling, sports entertainment, and broadcasting. So the next, we got that certification, and so the next step is to get accredited by a educational organization. There's one that oversees trade and vocational schools, and that's just red tape and money. That's all it is. But once we get accredited, then we can, then get, tuition paid for by, student finance, GI Bill, FAFSA, scholarships, all of that. We could operate just like a regular actual trade school. So
That's awesome.
Nikki?
I always have our last question because we're from New Jersey. I usually ask pork roll or Taylor ham, but you can just tell us what's your favorite breakfast sandwich or favorite breakfast.
So my favorite breakfast is probably steak and eggs.
Delicious.
Protein.
I love steak and eggs.
Why am I nuts?
You guys don't have Waffle House in New Jersey. You've got the diners, but you don't have Waffle House.
It's all like Jersey diners.
Yeah, you got the Jersey diners. And listen, you're missing out. The Jersey diners are nice. I love the diners up in the Northeast. But nothing beats a Waffle House because you always get dinner in a show. So
Jersey's weird in the sense that like it's such a hybrid community because like we're so close to New York City and like we get that whole city.
Vibe. But then when you get further south, you're more Pennsylvania. Yeah. It's a weird state.
And there's so many different like just the culture and like the food. It's just so different. It's
pretty cool. I love coming to New Jersey and seeing everybody there. And I've been there lots, over the years, and I've always had a fond spot in my heart for New Jersey. That's for sure.
Well, we appreciate that. Well, Al, before we let you go, where can everyone find you and let us know of your upcoming appearances and things like that?
Sure. If anybody is interested in OVW, they can go to ovwrestling.com. If they're interested in the Academy, they can go to ovwacademy.com. If they're interested in following me on social media, just follow me at The Real Al Snow. I came up with that name or handle for social media prior to the blue check mark because some people would fake beam me. And if you do, it's not like it's going to get me hot. I'll just message you and go like, could you aim the bar higher? I mean, if you're going to be fake being a celebrity, you'd be like George Clooney or, somebody like that. Jeez. Well, I don't even want to be Al Snow on social media, but I am. So, but that on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, Real Al Snow, and check out my comic books at Boca Icon Comics. You can check out .com. You can check out Unnatural on Amazon right now. You can check out Homeless for the Holidays here on November 19th. I also do Magic for the Blind. They love card tricks, surprisingly. I gotta say ta-da after every trick or they don't know anything happened. I'm like, is this your card? And they're like, I don't know. And you go, it is ta-da. And they're like, oh my God, how do you do it? So it's just my way of giving back to the community.
That's amazing. No, Al, well, again, we can't thank you enough. We appreciate
thank you.
And a pleasure. And again, best luck with everything. And we hope to, see more of you in the future.
I hope so too. Just not on America's Most Wanted. So.
Exactly.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, Al Snow.